There's a turf war brewing in Cote-des-Neiges. Parents there, they got kids enrolled in soccer, and there's simply not enough fields. And here's the thing, when you've got a grass field for soccer, there's a limited usage, right? Like grass wears down, natural grass wears down. And when it rains, boy, does it take long for that field to become playable again. So there's a solution: install artificial turf. And especially in spots where there's not a lot of fields, it certainly seems like a no-brainer, but it's turned into a turf war because there are others that are saying this is a health risk. Installing artificial turf could have serious health consequences. So to me, this turned from a story over, installing an artificial playing surface, it turned into a science story for me. And I think if we look to science, maybe we can find an answer as to whether or not this artificial turf field should be installed in Cote-des-Neiges. Let's get the take of the man himself, Dr. Joe Schwarcz, host of the Dr. Joe Show. Sundays at 3 on CJAD is on the line. Hi, Dr. Joe. Welcome back.
Hey, Elias, I hear that congratulations are in order.
Very, very true. Thank you so much, Dr. Joe. I appreciate that. So let's talk about this. I really do think this is a science story to me. And I remember a story in the West Island where parents didn't want a cell phone tower next to their park, and we talked to someone in science about it. This one's similar. Let's talk about artificial turf. Are there real health risks here?
It totally is a science story. And as with most science stories, it's not a question of being white or black. It's various shades of gray, or in this case, shades of green. Mm-hmm. Artificial turf has been controversial ever since it was first installed in the Astrodome in Houston. At that time, it was actually first called ChemTurf. That was at a time when the word chemistry still could be used in public. Anyway, there were immediately problems with it. It didn't last very long. Players complained of turf burns, etc. So since that time, there were numerous improvements in its texture. However, there really are some very significant issues abound. The first one that came to light was about the pigment that was used to color the grass because it had some lead in it. And obviously, you do not want exposure to lead. It's one of those substances that we say that even the tiniest exposure is too much. But by 2009, they began to use different pigments. However, there still are some old fields out there that still have lead in them. But with the new improvements, there was another issue that arose. And that is that in order to keep the blades of synthetic grass upright, and these are made either of nylon or polyethylene, that's not much of an issue. But to keep them upright, they fill in the spaces between the blades of glass by various materials. And the original material was something that we call crumb rubber, which is made by grinding up tires, old tires. Now, tires are chemically unbelievably complex. They have dozens and dozens of different compounds, both originating from the natural rubber, which is generally combined with synthetic rubber in tires. There are antioxidants. There's carbon black, which itself has a variety of polyaromatic hydrocarbons. Many of these in the laboratory can be shown to be carcinogenic. Now, just because something is shown in the laboratory to be carcinogenic doesn't mean that, playing on the turf that has some of this is a problem. But it means that it is something that needs to be looked into further. And another concern is that in order to keep the blades of grass resistant to moisture and to oily materials, they have what we call perfluoroalkyl substances, or the notorious PFASs, which have received a lot of publicity in recent years because they can have various effects on health. Now, the question is whether or not playing on such turf exposes whoever is on top of that turf to these chemicals. And it depends on whether you listen to environmental and consumer groups or you listen to industry researchers. The industry researchers say they have done all of the studies, and that while it is true that these potentially toxic chemicals are present, they don't leach out because they're secured within the particles. environmental groups say that that isn't really a good argument because you can see when players slide on the surfaces, you see a cloud of these particles come up, and that these can be inhaled, which is very possible. And indeed, there are some concerns that have been expressed that soccer goalies who play on these have an increased incidence of cancer because when they dive on the surface, all of this gunk comes up that they can inhale. Of course, the industry says that they've done their studies and that this is only anecdotal evidence. And when you compare players who play on artificial turf and on real grass, you don't find any difference. On the other hand, you have environmental groups who say that look at the Philadelphia Phillies, where 7 players who played on artificial turf have developed brain tumors over the years, and that is 3 times the expected incidence. So, you can argue this both ways. It is also unfortunately true that the turf gets hot very, very easily, much hotter than real grass, and it becomes uncomfortable to play on. And then, of course, there is the whole issue of grass being environmentally more friendly because the manufacture of all the synthetic substances that go into the turf, that has an impact on the environment. Whether or not we're talking about a health risk, there just isn't enough data to say. I've been on artificial turf and I've been on regular grass. I certainly prefer regular grass. Now, it is true that it takes more maintenance, but it's much more comfortable for sports activities. So I think if I were a voting member here, I would vote in favor of real grass. Mm-hmm. But I don't think that there's a tremendous risk to the health on playing on artificial turf, but we just don't have enough data to know that for sure. There's no question that there are problematic, potentially toxic substances that are present in the artificial material.
You weren't kidding, Dr. Joe, here about the shades of green when it comes to this issue, right? Because I also think about the number of hours you can play on a grass field per week versus the number of hours that people can play on a synthetic turf field. And people need a field to play on, right? And that's that whole other issue about it too, right?
That's the whole argument.
Yeah.
I mean, one thing we know for sure is that exercise is great for health.
That's it.
The more you do it, the better. So, whether or not putting in an artificial field is going to translate to more hours of sport activity for kids, that's arguable as well. Yeah. I don't think we have any, evidence for that. But I mean, I prefer grass, and I don't think we have the epidemiological evidence to say that players are more likely to get cancer by playing on the artificial turf. But it is something that needs to be further investigated because there is anecdotal evidence, and I underline anecdotal, that soccer goalies who've played on the synthetic turf have been diagnosed with some cancers at a rate that seems to be higher than normal. However, these clusters can also occur naturally. That's something that is also, important to understand, is that we need a control. We need to see how many players have come down with various diseases who have played on artificial as compared to those who have played on natural turf. And we don't have that data.
Dr. Joe, you're the best. Thanks so much for talking science.
Thanks very much.
That's Dr. Joe Schwarcz, of course, the director of the McGill Office for Science and Society.